Hey 90 Day friends, straight ahead on Skipping the Sheets. Did Cortney and Colt spend the night together before his tragic fall? Tiffany reveals she found the love of her life at the resort. And Chantel and Jeniffer lock lips again in secret. I watched 90 Day Hunt for Love Skipping the Sheets episode 8, The Boy Who Fell for Her Literally, so you don't have to. This week, we are starting things off inside Cortney's room. We get more of the behind-the-scenes video of what happened with Colt's fall. So, big tea spilled here to kick off the episode. Cortney reveals on Between the Sheets that she and Colt did not spend the night together before this all went down. So there'll be a lot of discussion about that later, who started the rumors, who told Usman, but Cortney wants to lay it all down on Between the Sheets. She says he wasn't there. What happened was Colt called Cortney in the morning and discovered that she was pretty upset. She said there was a lot of drama going down at the resort. She was getting ready for her date with Usman that day, and she was kind of in her feelings. So Colt came over and they had breakfast together in her room, as it sounds like they did many mornings at the resort, and then she felt better. She was ready to go out on her date with Usman. Colt left, or so she thought, and then we get all the details. Chantel says, hey, producers, Between the Sheets, I'd like to see the video of Colt's tragic fall, and obviously, so would I. Now, we have seen right outside their rooms, there are security cameras. The cameras are always lurking around too. For every good night kiss, every other time we need to see what goes down in front of the door of someone's room. We get it. I strongly believe that production does have video of Colt falling. However, because of liability issues and the fact that this all started with Colt's leg when he was on the last resort years ago with his still wife, Vanessa. He fell while jumping on a trampoline there. So I think the show probably has some contractual liability here to take care of Colt, seeing as how this is the second time he's injured himself on set. And I think that not showing us the video is probably part of protecting themselves and Colt. So I'm guessing we will never see the video of what actually happened outside Cortney's room on these rain-wet steps. But Cortney and Colt give us a little bit more of what was going down inside the room. And all that Colt can talk about as he's watching himself writhe in pain on Between the Sheets is how hot the doctor was who was tending to him. That's right. He even says in the moment when his leg was hurting and broken and he couldn't even walk, all he could think about is how attracted he was to the doctor. Cortney even reveals that at one point when she was trying to take care of Colt, he was just staring into the doctor's eyes and telling her how beautiful they were. Poor Cortney cannot catch a break. Even today, she woke up in a bad mood. She's about to go on a date with Usman. She still gets even her breakfast date with Colt, and now she has to watch him hit on the doctor tending to him. So let's talk a little bit about what went down once they got in the ambulance. So we watched Jeniffer hop in and go along with Cortney and Colt. She said because nobody else spoke Spanish. Well, on Between the Sheets, she discusses this a little more and said really she wanted to go along with Cortney because Cortney needed the support. We all saw what a mess Cortney was as Colt was being hauled into the ambulance, and Jeniffer says she really wanted to be there for Cortney. On the other hand, Cortney says actually talking to Jeniffer in the ambulance, she just wanted a break from the resort. She was so over Colt stressing her out, and she was ready to get out of there, even if it was with flashing lights and sirens. Jeniffer didn't stick around, so we saw them go to that first hospital, and then Cortney explains a little bit more on Between the Sheets, and she says this is where it really got serious for Colt. So Cortney rode along with him to the next hospital, and Jeniffer went back to the resort. Cortney says during the ambulance ride, Colt was still in tons of pain, and his worry was really not to worry anyone else. He asked Cortney not to call his mom, Debbie, who we all know very well and who we know would want to understand what's going on with her son and his health. He's a bit of a mama's boy. But Colt begged Cortney not to call his mom or tell anyone really what was going on because he didn't want anyone to worry about him. Interesting. Cortney also continues crying, even on Between the Sheets when she's watching all this back. And she says again, he's in pain because of me. So we really needed to get this more of behind the scenes of what really happened before and after Colt's fall, because I was really confused watching Hunt for Love. Why does Cortney feel responsible for this? Why is she so upset? But can you guess who wasn't? In the moment, and even watching this back, Rob cannot muster up one teeny little bit of empathy here. So they show us a little bit more of the scene of the cast finding out what had happened to Colt, and more of what we didn't see, which was producers telling Tiffany, Tim, and Rob, who were hanging out together, about what had happened. And Rob just laughs when he hears this, and he kind of goes and walks off and goes to talk to some of the normie single gals, goes and chats up some ladies after he hears that Colt is in pain. And Tiffany and Tim aren't really impressed by this. In the moment, in the scene that we hadn't seen before, Tiffany even calls Rob a dickhead for not running off to go see what was happening with Colt. However, Tim and Tiffany didn't go rush to what was all going down either. So it was kind of funny. It seemed like a bit of a setup between the producers. Let's get them receiving this news and then talking about receiving the news. And then at some point, I guess they actually let Tim and Tiffany go and see what was actually happening. Rob explains, yesterday, I almost hurt Colt myself. So this was the day after the social media workshop when they had their argument. So Rob's like, why would I care? I didn't feel like talking to Colt. Colt is shocked watching Rob's reaction to what happened to him. Colt is sitting there and he says, I am 100% surprised at Rob's behavior. I wasn't shocked. Did he think that Rob was a really sympathetic or empathetic person before this? And his behavior here ruined it for Colt? Highly doubt that. Elise chimes in too, like Rob's behavior here is not cool. She seems to be looking for any excuse at this point to kind of go in on him. I'm going to give Rob a little grace here. I think he's right. He says it would have been fake and performative for him to go pretend like he cared what was going on with Colt. And can you imagine if you were Colt? Like, Colt is surprised at Rob's reaction, but also if Colt was there and Rob came running over and acted like he cared, wouldn't have that been seen as a little bit transparent anyway? So I'm going to give Rob this one. And at this point, he didn't know, and no one really did, how serious this was and how serious it continued to be. I'm curious to see if Colt will be coming back to the resort after this. We know there's been tons of reports online that what happened is Colt went to Cortney's house in Florida, that Cortney took him to her parents' home to heal up, and that he actually ended up staying there for months and months until they had to ask him to leave. So undoubtedly we will get the real story. There is no corroboration there, no idea whether that is true or not, but that is what the internets are saying, and we will see if Colt returns to the resort or not. However, we also get to see a little bit more of the aphrodisiac cooking class outtakes, and Usman honestly looks upset watching the scene back of Tim telling him that Colt had slept in Cortney's room the night before. So now we know, viewers watching Between the Sheets, we know that's not true. But there's going to be a lot more talk about how that rumor started and specifically who started it this week and even more into next week. So that is very important. Usman reveals also that he's tried to hang out with Cortney a ton of times off camera. So when he's realizing that Colt went to her room in the morning and they had breakfast and that this is something that they did often, Usman's like, I always did want to hang out with Cortney. How come she was turning me down and still spending time with Colt? And also that lends a little bit more perspective to Cortney's narrative that Usman didn't want to spend time with her. Remember she had said last week that she felt like Colt was actually trying to get to know her. There really seemed to be some miscommunication between Usman and Cortney, and I think that really stems from her questioning his motives at all, and rightfully so, right? I still am not sure if he was pushing for Cortney just to have something to do there, to be on camera and to be well cast, or if he really was butthurt over seeing her relationship develop with Colt. He's making that real believable in this moment. But Colt says, on the other hand, he thought Usman knew that he was spending so much time with Cortney. And here, get this, you guys, Colt actually calls Cortney his person at this time. He's like, we were hanging out all the time. She was my person, and I thought Usman knew it. Oh, interesting. Maybe this has to do more with Usman just not being observant. He does seem like sort of the typical man in that regard, doesn't he? Well, Tiffany and Tim are watching all this messiness play back once again. And Tim said, he was not trying to hurt Usman in this moment, which he did end up doing. Tiffany's like, that's BS. But they don't address the rumor just then yet. Another little tidbit, though, from the aphrodisiac cooking class is the whole thing about how Tim wouldn't eat the vagina-shaped fig. So on Between the Sheets, a producer tries to get Tim to eat a dried fig, and he does it. Okay, he takes a little bite, and of course he hates it. But they also do this thing where they make the cast eat bugs. Like gave them a silver platter of crickets and worms and all kinds of things. And Tim actually had no problem putting that worm in his mouth and asking Tiffany to take another bite. So the fig, not so much. Worm, totally okay with it. Let's check in on this. Hey, Jeniffer, what do you think? Well, she reiterates like, hey, I never said Tim was gay, but look at this stuff he's doing. He's not doing himself any favors by refusing to eat something that everyone just described as vagina-shaped and him going, ew. Okay, Jeniffer, we'll give you that one. You're probably right. He's not doing himself any favors, but also he just doesn't care. The biggest evidence that Tim is straight is that he doesn't seem to care at all that people don't believe that. Makes me think that if he was a member of the LGBTQIA plus community, he would tell us. Well, his great friend Tiffany, let's talk a little bit more about that. She gets a phone call while she's sitting there on the couch filming Between the Sheets, and it's from Tim. It's a FaceTime, and he tells her, babe, I'm all ready for our date tonight. I'm at home. And she's wondering, do you mean you're at home or you mean our home here? So remember, the cast is filming all together in New York City at the same time. And this was Tim calling Tiffany to tell her, I am ready for tonight. I got the movies ready. She always says he has her blanket warm, and she starts to describe on Between the Sheets how Tim is just the best date ever. He is so thoughtful and considerate, and she loves having these date nights with him. Tiffany even goes so far as to call Tim the love of her life. Oh, they are fanning these flames. I have seen so many posts in the last week. Tiffany and Tim are making these posts and calling each other their love and their girlfriend and saying they're going on dates and all that kind of stuff. And I know there is a segment of general fans, shall we call them, that don't check in as often as we do, and they are buying this. They're like, are Tim and Tiffany really together? Oh my gosh, how long? Are they going to stay together? What do we think of this? Well, we know that it's fake. Anyone who's watching here too, I'm guessing you smelled a little BS on all of that too. But I appreciate that Tim and Tiffany are trying to play with us a little bit. And I really, really like this friendship they've developed, mostly because it gives us a lot of tea, right? They kind of let us know what was really going on with one another. And so I really love their friendship. And again, that's all that it is. Now, let's talk about sex, baby, with the girls on girls' night. Chantel has a little bit more of an explanation of the fantasy that she revealed on Hunt for Love, where she wants to meet her man up at a bar and pretend like they don't know each other. Chantel is our reluctant sex symbol. Last week, we learned that she likes to take things slow. She doesn't want an aggressive kiss. She's really kind of in her head about what happened with her friend Ashley before she came to the resort. And I think Chantel clearly got this fantasy from television, mainly Modern Family or any other show that seems to be like the sitcom safe fantasy that people can play out. So whether Chantel had ever thought about doing that or not, I don't know. I kind of doubt it, but I feel like she is so attractive and everyone makes such a big deal out of how hot she is and boobs and butt and the whole thing. Everyone's always talking about it, but she's not a sexually aggressive person. It doesn't seem like she is not comfortable with putting herself out there like, look at me and look how hot I am and don't you want to touch me? Like, that's just not her vibe. So for her to have such a tame fantasy was not really a surprise. And Chantel, it's okay. You don't have to force it. You don't have to be some kind of sex symbol just because of what God gave you. It's okay because Rob has an extreme enough fantasy for everyone. He wants to do it after jumping out of a plane while free falling. He said that would definitely take the Mile High Club to the next level. He was talking about being performative before. I think that might be the epitome of that. Well, we are getting all of the cast thoughts on Between the Sheets about the girls' fantasies that they revealed on Hunt for Love. And Cole actually calls Tiffany's fantasy of being with two men vanilla. Does anyone out there think that Cole is spicy? Do we think that maybe as extreme as Cole gets is like French vanilla? He probably shouldn't be saying that about anybody else. I don't know. I got some questions for Cole if he thinks that he can be calling somebody else vanilla. So Cole is not impressed with Tiffany's fantasy, but it sounds like maybe his friend Carlo was. Cole and Carlo are sitting on the couch together, and Carlo reveals that Tiffany told him her fantasy, and he makes it sound like it was maybe something else, something that she didn't reveal on camera. And Carlo gets big points from me for this. He refuses to reveal it to Cole or producers or fans what Tiffany told him her fantasy was. And we know Cortney didn't get a chance to tell us all what she's got going on in her mind because she was still at the hospital with Colt when all this went down. But she says she wishes she was there to be part of the conversation because Jennifer's whole trans reveal that was what Jennifer would be into made Cortney wonder what kind of weird sex stuff Tim and Jen were into. Cortney makes this offhand comment like, I know they were freaks together, but they never had sex. So what's up with that? Maybe Jennifer was attracted to Tim because he is kind of feminine and she's into that femininity. Like Cortney's talking it out in her head, but she really says something profound here. Tim and Jennifer both talked a big game sexually with each other before they ever met up. We're still talking about what happened 7 years ago and the strip club and all that kind of stuff. And we know Tim told Jennifer that they were going to be swingers and that Jennifer acted like she was all down. They made it sound on the show to the fans like they had this hot, sexy time going on to the point where Cortney even is buying that. But she points out, but they never even hooked up. So what was really going on there? Well, whole lot of nothing. Although, if you want to hear more about Jennifer's fantasies, we might be getting into it here. They kept promoting this, and I'm sure you saw the clip even if you didn't watch. Chantel keeps saying, Jennifer kissed me that night. Jennifer kissed me in the bathroom. And it was a little unclear whether she was talking about later that night after the Single Olympics when they had their first kiss on camera, or whether she's talking about that night, girls' night, when they were all out together. And I'm pretty sure she means the night of Single Olympics because this isn't the first we've heard about this. Remember a few episodes ago, Chantel revealed that she thought Jennifer was hitting on her after the Single Olympics, asking her to come to her room, etc. And that when Chantel turned her down, Jennifer called her a bitch. And we made a big deal out of that here on the show. Well, now we're getting what I believe is the same story again. Not that Jennifer tried to kiss Chantel in secret a second time. This is the same story. But this time Chantel does not mention that Jennifer really went off on her. But Chantel does explain that Jennifer kissed her in the bathroom and asked her to go back to Jennifer's room with her. Jennifer gets taken to task about this by the producers on Between the Sheets, and she just kind of deadpans into the camera and is clearly lying when she says that she never tried to kiss Chantel off camera, never tried to kiss her after the Single Olympics, and that the Single Olympics thing was just for the game, and the rest of the cast, they lie. I think you lie, Jennifer, and there's not even really much more to say about that because I don't believe you, okay? They play this fun little game called Pick Your Produce, where they ask the cast to match a carrot, a banana, an eggplant, cucumber, zucchini, a hot dog, and a mini wiener to which male cast member they think that would represent. Of course, that is pure speculation and not even really worth us talking about more of this risque stuff that they're trying to keep our interest intact. But the funny thing here is that Tiffany picks up the mini wiener, you know, the little guy like this, and she says, Colt, this is Colt. That's what I heard. And then she points to Cortney, who is sitting right next to her on the couch. Cortney takes this moment to reiterate. She nods and she says, soft. So little bit of girl talk, juicy tidbits from behind the scenes with the ladies. We're going to find out what all happened between Cortney and Colt after all of this. But the fact that Cortney is willing to kind of sit there and make jokes about his genitalia makes me think that they're maybe not on the best terms right now in real time. Let's talk about the boys' night out and how instead of having a fun flirty conversation as the girls did, remember the girls talked about how they want to kiss each other, the guys would rather punch each other in the face. No big deal. Carlo says, listen, this is not the first of me being agitated with Jay. I didn't know him well. He didn't come to me much, but I did know that he ordered Burger King to the resort every single day, and Carlo thought that was stupid. I think it's funny and interesting. I always wonder, were they just eating what's at the resort? Do they have the freedom to be like, hey, production, I need Burger King? You know what? Jay wasn't paying for that out of pocket. He must get meals and they were probably bringing it to him. So any behind the scenes juice we can get, who knows if that Burger King tidbit is going to be important sometime in the future. So I'm clocking it, just saying. So Carlo also reveals, this might be the actual interesting thing to you, that the normie singles all had their own group chat and that Jay sort of led this group chat, and every morning it would start off with Jay sending them what Carlo calls, it was an inspirational quote, but also it was sort of paranoid stuff. It was like how we the normies have to watch our backs. So inspirational, yes, but sounds like more of a Jay trying to corral the normies, be the head of them. And Carlo doesn't sound like he didn't like that very much. Elise knows Carlo very, very well, not Jay so much, but Elise and Carlo have a friendship, and this is not the first that we've heard about this. Maybe more, I suspect, because Elise explains that Carlo told her he wanted other guys to go after Tiffany because Carlo didn't want to be with Tiffany and that he was actually scared of her. So Elise doesn't explain why Carlo would be scared of Tiffany. I can't even imagine what that's about. But Elise is wondering, why would Carlo tell me that he doesn't like Tiffany and that he wants some other guy to go for her? Why would he lie to me if he really is upset about it so much that he's willing to throw down with Jay over it? Well, gee, Elise, I don't know. Let's think about this. Why would Carlo, who you are clearly developing a connection with, lie to you and say that he doesn't like Tiffany that much? Maybe because there's something developing between Elise and Carlo. We will be paying special attention to that from here on out. Tiffany, meanwhile, is shocked watching what goes down between her two guys. Apparently, she didn't know that they were so passionate over her. Tim's like giving her a little bit more of the scoop in real time on Between the Sheets. And he's like, yeah, I was the only one trying to pull these guys apart. They're like the two biggest guys there. I'm the smallest guy. And I was the only one who had the balls. Like Rocky's over talking to some chicks. And Tim's like, actually now I sort of wish that I would have just let them beat the shit out of each other. So I don't know what Carlo and Jay did after this, but Tim's like, should have just let it go down. Would have made for good TV, although I doubt they would have showed much of that. Well, more than physical fights, there is some sticky stuff going on here, and we are going to explore the idea of whether Cole was stalking Jeniffer at the resort. We've heard a little bit about him hanging out, making calls, that kind of stuff. Let's really get into it here. They show a little bit more of the girls' night out, and Jen telling everybody what's going down. Well, Tiffany tells Jen, we've been here for 10 days at this point. That was super interesting and important to me. We're always trying to figure out where the timeline is here. You know, at first we were hearing they were there for 2 weeks. Now it sounds like they were there for a month. I'm sure it was probably somewhere in between. But to understand where they are at this point, how well they knew each other, a week and a half's worth is what's going down between Jeniffer and Cole here. Okay. And Tiffany points that out. She's like, it could get so much worse if it's already this bad. Well, Rob can give us a little bit more insight into this. He says what Jen told him is that Cole popped up at her room early in the morning, that he was looking in her windows, and that he was over at Tiffany's room, even next to Jen's room, trying to look into Jen's backyard. Of course, Rob wants to paint Cole as the bad guy, but he might be onto something here. The looking in the windows thing and being at Tiffany's, trying to check out what was going down in Jennifer's room, that's legit. Cole admitted that Between the Sheets. He said, I never wanted anyone to know this, but yes, it sounds like that first night that Jeniffer and Rob went off together, Tiffany and Carlo were at her room and they actually went and got Cole and were like, let's go see. And they according to them, the three of them, they scaled Tiffany's room. They climbed onto the roof to try to see what was going on in Jennifer's backyard area, where was a pool. Remember, Rob was clapping the cheeks, according to Tim. We're still talking about that all way back then. But Cole has admitted to that, at least. Well, Cole tries to clarify the rest of it. Again, this is that same night. Jeniffer had said, he came to my room at 4 a.m. Tiffany says to Jen, when he's coming to your room at 2 a.m., so it just sounds worse. Cole clarifies it was 6 a.m. and that the reason why he went to Jennifer's room that morning was because he had gone there at 10 p.m. the night before and her light was on, but she wasn't there. This is when Rob and Jeniffer started in her room in the pool, and then they ended up going back to Rob's room to play Mario Kart. Remember? And I think that's the very graphic scene that we saw of them. So I don't know how Cole makes this sound much better. That like he was checking on her in the evening and then she wasn't there. So he did go to check on her at 6 a.m., which it sounds like he decided was early enough, but not too early. Is Cole stalking Jen? Well, that doesn't make it sound like he wasn't, but let's add a little perspective here. We are about to learn something. Cole and Jeniffer had already spent the night together. Cole says they had had sex at this point. According to Cole, he and Jeniffer had made love. Remember, we assume this is the night when they were visited by their raccoon friend, Pachito. But what Cole is saying is that in his mind, it wasn't weird for him to go check on Jeniffer because he and her had already gone all the way and they were really starting up something serious. Again, the timing here of when Jen hooked up with each of them is something that we're really going to have to get out the charts and the whiteboard, and is probably not appropriate or even makes that much of a difference to do all of that. But we are going to piece together as much as we can. And Cole is doing the same thing. And he says now he really sees. He acknowledges Jen was gaslighting him, walking all over him. And he appreciated Cole did the way that the girls supported him and stood up for him during their conversation. But he thinks that Tiffany made things a little bit worse by being like, oh, it was 2 a.m. and he's coming to your room. That's what put it in Jen's mind that it was weird that he was coming to check on her. Cole was appreciative, but like, Tiffany took it a little bit too far. And Jen even says, you know what? Tiffany is two-faced. So it sounds to me like she just was caring about her new friend Cole, but I guess we are going to get even more into that. What about Jeniffer and Rob and Elise? Cole is not the only one looking like a fool. Elise too, after really trying to get at Rob that first night, and now her being upset that the rumors are that she's the one hooking up with Rob. Let's get this little tidbit. So Jeniffer explains on Between the Sheets, she says someone else had left scratches on Rob's back. It wasn't me. They were already there when I saw, and everybody else noticed these scratches too. Jen's like, what happened? Who left those? What really went down between Rob and Elise? So she sort of gives us this little bit of evidence, like, no, I had reason to believe this. That's the first we've heard of there being any actual proof of Elise and Rob hooking up. And it seems like Jen has some weird concern in her mind about Elise anyway. She goes on and on about, well, what really happened between Elise and Rob? Like, she clearly does not know, even after filming Wrapped, what happened between them. And Jen is like kind of talking it out. She's confused. She says it is not normal how Rob changed on Elise. Jeniffer really interpreted it as like Rob was into Elise that first night and then something happened and then he didn't want anything to do with her. What we really saw was Elise going hard, Rob trying to not look like an F-boy, but maybe he would take it if he could have gotten it without us knowing. Then things sort of developed with Rob and Jeniffer. So who knows what would have happened? I don't think anything did go down between Rob and Elise. Do you guys? Let's get to some breaking news. This is a good one. Chantel of Hunt for Love's ex-husband, Pedro, has a new girlfriend. Yes, Pedro has a new girl. He even took her to go visit and meet his mom and sister recently. Oh my God, to be a fly on the wall. There are photos of him and the new girl with Nicole and what's probably her boyfriend. That means this is serious. Pedro has only been posting on social media for like 6 weeks or maybe a little more about finding someone, or like kind of seems like he's being flirty and saying that he's starting up something new just for the last month and a half or so. So this is clearly new, but serious enough for Pedro to take this woman who is beautiful. We don't know anything else about her, however, but he's willing to take her to go meet Nicole and Lydia, which has not gone well in the past for him. It was a whole show. Chantel got her whole own spinoff over meeting Pedro's family. So what will go down in the future between Pedro and his new girl? Will we ever see Nicole and Lydia on camera again? My fingers are crossed, and I will be keeping an eye on Pedro and seeing what we can find out about his new lady. So congratulations to him. We know that a few months ago in like March, he at least spent a weekend or something with Rob's ex, Sophie. So it seemed like maybe with Rob and Chantel, both over at Hunt for Love, Pedro and Sophie were like trying to kind of make their own splash because they were very public about it, but that went absolutely nowhere. Maybe because that's about the time that Pedro started seeing this new girlfriend. So I will keep you posted on all of that. Let's wrap up with a couple of random reveals, little tidbits you might not have picked up on from between the sheets. Cortney says at one point, she reveals that the normie singles told her that she was the most sane of the 90-day cast that were there at the resort. A bit of a surprise, not that Cortney is that wacky or anything, but that the normies would describe any of the 90-dayers as sane is pretty funny to me. Cortney says she thinks it's actually Colt who is the most sane of them all. Odd, but again, she knows him the best. So one more little thing. Cole calls out Tiffany for putting ketchup on her eggs, and he was so shocked and so disgusted, and he's sitting next to Carlo, who's like, and what? I love ketchup on my eggs. And you know what? 90-Day fam, Christy reports loves ketchup on her eggs too, and I don't eat chicken eggs. I'm vegan, so I eat vegan egg substitutes, but they taste the same, and when I did eat eggs, always ketchup on the eggs. I don't know, it's kind of a white trashy thing I actually go through a lot of in my house. But this is not random reveals about Christy. This is Skipping the Sheets, and next week on Skipping the Sheets, we are going to be looking at the cast. They blow up Rocky's stuff. Rocky is just a guy who seems like he's a good time. He's there to look good. We haven't heard or seen a lot of him yet, but we are going to learn what Rocky's been doing next week. Colt even says, hey, I think Rocky wanted to hook up with me. Okay, we know we got Nikki there who's bi, maybe. Who knows? Let's find out. Jen will also confront Cole in front of Elise about the whole rumor that he supposedly started, that it was Rob and Elise hooking up. So we're going to get to the truth eventually about that. And then Tiffany will reveal it was her who told Cole that Elise and Rob were hooking up. This is a lot to follow. We're finally going to get to the bottom of it. And that will be more from Girls' Night of Jen and Elise screaming at each other. Man, those are a couple of fiery gals, and I cannot wait to see them go toe to toe. So I will be here next week. These always drop on Tuesdays, just as early as I can after the show is on Mondays. And don't forget that you can also listen if you're a podcast person. Skipping the Sheets is available on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get those. But please also check out my YouTube channel and go and search for some of my other videos if you want to know what happened to everybody's ex who is on Hunt for Love. You know, Tiffany's ex Ronald is running scams, and there just is a lot to talk about there. I am also currently working on an update that has every couple from The Other Way seasons 4, 5, and 6. It's in the can. I'm just pulling some videos, and pretty soon you will get all of that coming your way. So make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any good stuff. And I just so appreciate you guys watching. I see so many positive comments, and I really have a tough time with the bad ones, and so I don't always take the motion to respond to the good ones. But I'm going to do that soon, and I see those, and that's what I think about when I sit down to film. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. It is so much fun to be building this community with you. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you again next week for more Skipping the Sheets. Have a good one.